Look closely at this microscopic amoeba. Because it consists of just a single cell suspended in fluid, it doesn't need to breathe. As it moves, it effortlessly absorbs dissolved oxygen directly through its outer skin. Now, compare that to a human. If you finish a 100-meter sprint, you're bent over, chest heaving, pulling air into your body with intense, deliberate mechanical effort. Before we go further, we have to correct a common biological mix-up. When we talk about this process, we are dealing with gaseous exchange, the physical transport of oxygen in and carbon dioxide out. That is entirely different from cellular respiration, which is the internal chemical reaction that actually burns the oxygen to create energy. The reason you have to heave your chest to perform gaseous exchange is an anatomical problem. You are built of trillions of living cells, and most of them are buried deep underneath layers of muscle, bone, and fat, completely cut off from the oxygen-rich air outside. If a complex organism relied on oxygen slowly seeping through its skin like an amoeba, its internal organs would suffocate. Physics forces large animals to develop specialized internal surfaces and mechanical pumps simply to move gases fast enough to stay alive. This entire biological hurdle is governed by a single mathematical axiom: the surface area to volume ratio. Let's look at the math on a microscopic scale. This is a simple 1 centimeter cube. Its total surface area easily dominates its internal volume, giving it a healthy ratio of 6:1. Oxygen has plenty of surface area to enter through, and very little distance to travel to reach the center. Watch what happens when that organism grows larger. Its internal volume increases exponentially faster than its outer skin surface area. When we scale the cube to 4 centimeters, the ratio plummets to 1.5:1. The consequence of this math is lethal. As the blue oxygen molecules penetrate the outer surface, they run out of momentum. They simply stall and fade out long before reaching the core of the organism. Simple diffusion cannot keep up. To survive, large bodies require an evolutionary workaround, a way to bypass that thick outer skin entirely and deliver gases directly to the interior. The mathematical collapse of the surface area to volume ratio is the precise reason why structures like human lungs and fish gills had to evolve in the first place. Think about the process of filtering traditional Ugandan sweet banana juice, or lubisi. The flow of the liquid depends entirely on the quality of the cotton bark cloth used as a filter. If the cloth is too thick, dry, or clogged, nothing passes through. Respiratory surfaces obey the exact same physical logic. To maximize diffusion, every efficient biological membrane follows 5 universal rules. First, it needs massive surface area, achieved through extreme folding. Second, the walls must be incredibly thin, strictly 1 cell thick, to minimize the distance the gas has to travel. Third, gases cannot physically cross a living cell membrane unless they are first dissolved in a liquid. Therefore, the surface must remain permanently moist. Finally, for complex vertebrates, you need a dense capillary network underneath to rapidly carry the extracted oxygen away, and a mechanical ventilation system above to constantly sweep in fresh air or water. Whether an organism flies over the savanna, swims in a lake, or sprints on a track, its respiratory organs are essentially highly engineered biological machines executing these 5 exact parameters. In humans, the system starts with a continuous tube. Air enters the nasal cavity, where it is warmed and filtered, then travels down through the pharynx and larynx and into the trachea. The trachea is kept rigid by rings of cartilage, but these rings are entirely C-shaped rather than full circles. This specific shape leaves the back of the windpipe flexible, giving the esophagus room to expand every time you swallow food. The branching tubes eventually terminate deep inside the lungs at millions of microscopic elastic sacs called alveoli. The alveolus is where the 5 universal rules are executed flawlessly. The physical barrier between the air inside the sac and the red blood cell waiting in the capillary is less than 1 micrometer thick. Static anatomy doesn't explain how the air gets there. How does the body force atmospheric gas all the way down into this complex branching tree? It's driven entirely by volume and pressure. During inhalation, your diaphragm muscle contracts and flattens downward, while the intercostal muscles pull your ribcage upward and outward. This instantly increases the volume of your chest cavity. Because the volume increases, the internal air pressure inside your lungs drops below atmospheric pressure. This creates a vacuum. Air from the outside environment naturally rushes in, down the trachea, to fill that empty space. Exhalation is the passive reversal of this process. The muscles relax, the diaphragm moves back up, the volume of the chest cavity decreases, and the rising pressure forces the toxic carbon dioxide waste back out. Breathing is not a conscious pulling of air. It is a continuous mechanical manipulation of physical volume, designed to let atmospheric pressure do the heavy lifting for you. Mammalian lungs are highly effective on land, but aquatic environments present a severe constraint. Water contains significantly less dissolved oxygen than atmospheric air, demanding a hyper-efficient method of extraction. Look at the bony fish, specifically the Nile tilapia. To survive in freshwater lakes, it relies on gills, which are safely protected beneath a bony flap on the side of its head called the operculum. Isolating a single gill arch reveals three structures: a rigid, cream-colored bone for support, inward-facing spiky gill rakers acting as a sieve for debris, and outward-facing bright pink gill filaments where the actual gas exchange happens. The filaments solve a complex fluid dynamics problem. If blood and water flowed across these surfaces in the same direction, a concurrent flow, diffusion would stop the moment oxygen levels equalized. The fish would extract half the available oxygen. Instead, the fish utilizes countercurrent flow. The blood inside the gills flows in the exact opposite direction to the water outside. Because of this opposing movement, oxygen-poor blood is always meeting water that contains a higher concentration of oxygen. The diffusion gradient never equalizes. It remains steep across the entire surface. This countercurrent engineering is what allows the tilapia to extract up to 80% of the available oxygen, thriving in a dense, low-oxygen medium that would quickly suffocate a mammal. We've established how precise these systems are, but that precision makes them highly vulnerable to environmental hazards, like the dense, particulate-heavy exhaust above city traffic or the thick smoke from a domestic wood fire. When you inhale smoke, the respiratory system's first line of defense physically fails. Sticky, black tar coats the lining of the trachea. It acts like glue, paralyzing the cilia, the microscopic, sweeping hairs meant to keep dust out of the lungs. Without the cilia to sweep it away, that toxic particulate matter pools deep inside the respiratory tract, setting the stage for severe pathologies like emphysema. Emphysema physically dismantles the biology of the lung. The delicate, elastic walls of the alveoli simply break down. Tiny, clustered air sacs merge into a single, large, inelastic, dead space. This brings us right back to our very first mathematical rule. Emphysema directly destroys the surface area required for diffusion. The patient suffers from systemic oxygen starvation because the geometry of their lungs has collapsed. This data table shows the composition of the air we breathe. We inhale air containing 21% oxygen, and we exhale it at 16%. But look at the carbon dioxide. We inhale a fraction of a percent and exhale 4%. We only manage to extract a small fraction of the oxygen available in each breath, yet we multiply our toxic carbon dioxide output by a factor of 100. That extreme metabolic demand proves exactly why the alveolar membrane must remain pristine and highly functional. When these delicate membranes fail due to chronic pollution or disease, the mechanical breakdown becomes a severe clinical emergency, requiring intervention at specialized facilities. In nature, organisms survive by adapting to their specific local environments, developing deep respiratory defenses to manage heat, dust, and physical exertion. Gaseous exchange is an invisible masterpiece of fluid dynamics, scaling geometry and impossibly thin biological barriers. This exact, precise physical process is happening inside your chest right now. It is quietly calculating volume and pressure, powering your brain and body with every single breath. Protecting our air from pollution is essential because we are actively protecting the fragile, microscopic interfaces that allow us to interact with the world and exist within it.